Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. Welcome to Council. Thank you for attending this evening. We're going to resume this regular Council meeting of January the 28th. And we're on to item number 20 on page 3. Is there any disclosure of interest for any of the councillors for any of the hearings this evening? Seeing none, we'll progress straight into the hearings. Item 21, so for council and for the gallery's information, we have 3 hearings, and I will read a short opening statement that will apply to all 3 hearings. We'll then do the hearings separately, one at a time, and after each hearing, we will vote on the temporary use permit, or the cannabis retail store application, or the development permit. So we'll hold the hearing, have the vote, then go to the second one and the third one. And we'll hold the hearings one at a time. So the first first I'll read the opening statement. I'd like to open up the hearings for temporary use permit -15, CRS -7, and variance permit -492. Following the reading of the motion, I'll request the Director of Development Services to explain the development. I will then ask 3 times for submissions from the gallery, giving the opportunity for the applicant and public to speak. Council will also have the opportunity to ask questions. Once this is complete, I will close the hearing and Council will vote on the motion. So our first hearing is temporary use permit number TUP15. Could we have the motion, please? Oh, we need a motion from the floor for this one, don't we? Is there a councillor who would like to make the motion? Thank you, Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Flynn. Would the CEO read the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that temporary use permit 15 amendment be approved for Lot 1, Plan 27414, Parcel B, Plan B5839, and Lot 1, Plan 4279, and that TUP 15 permit the temporary use of campgrounds as shown in Appendix 2 of the staff report in accordance with the amended terms and conditions. TUP 15 is valid for a 2-week period during the month of August for the years 2018, 19, and 20, with camping limited to a maximum of 7-day time period during the Roots and Blues Festival. And TUP 15 camping area is expanded on Lot 1, Plan 4279, as shown in Appendix 2 of the staff report dated January 10, 2019.
Thank you. Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. The applicant for this TUP amendment is the Salmon Folk Music Society, and the permit applies to 3 properties, which I'll show you on the map in just a bit. Council approved TUP 15 last May, in May 2018, for a campground for the Roots and Blues Festival across the street from the campground. The property is entirely in the Agricultural Land Reserve, and it's zoned A2, Rural Holding Zone. And both the ALC regulations and the A2 zone do not allow the use of a campground. So one way to overcome those regulations is through a temporary use permit. And the Roots and Blues Salmon Arm Folk Music Society have been applying for TUPs every 3 to 4 years since about 2005. So this is an amendment being proposed to TUP 15 that was approved last year, and the amendment is to increase the duration of the campground from 4 days to 7 days, and to also include this area hatched in yellow as part of Campground 3. The Agricultural Land Commission, their rules are paramount compared to our zoning, and they allow the Roots and Blues Festival for a period of 2 weeks, and they always had. And when we contacted them about this idea of expanding the area of the campground, they indicated no concerns, because as far as they were concerned, at least it sounded like this by their email, the entire property applies to what they approved. So with the TUP approved last May, and then the festival in August last year, TUP 15 would apply for this year's festival in August, and then the 2020 festival, and then it would expire. And to make it more complicated, after this festival this year, the ALC approval runs out.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate that. So we'll hold the hearing on this item first, and I see representative from Roots and Blues, David Ganella, is here. David, would you like to come forward first and just chat with council?
Hello, how are you?
Good, welcome. Good to have you here.
So the question is that we want to expand to 7 days and to the extra area for to allow for the festival to actually rent out 600 sites. We've been allowed 600, but from last year indication, we've not really been able to go over 500 because of space allowed. We have taken that on ourselves to make sure that the sites are laid out in a certain way that they have the proper traffic flow. This expansion will allow us to actually possibly go into 600 sites being registered, and that would also allow, because it is a new space, to lower the amount of space sites on each of the 4 properties. Actually, the 3 properties. The expansion of the third one gives us an ample amount of room to allow bigger trailers to come on earlier and faster. We believe that will actually reduce the amount of traffic in the area, especially the onboarding. The other part of the plan is going from 4 to 7 days would also lessen the amount of impact on the Thursday, Friday, when lots of our camper registers come in. That we believe that there'll be at least 10 to 20% will come earlier in the week. So that will also make that end of the week not as hectic and crazy at that crossing at 10th Avenue and 10th Street. That's pretty much all I have at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll just see if there's any
Kind of
questions.
a dry subject, but yeah.
Does anyone have a question for Mr. Ganella? Okay, I see no questions. You can have a seat, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll call for a second time if there's anyone that would like to come forward and speak to us about this temporary use permit amendment. Asking for a third time. Last opportunity. Okay, I'll close this portion of the public hearing and we will consider the motion. Council, any comments on the motion? Councillor Flynn.
Just one quick question to staff. This is, in my opinion, relatively easy to deal with. What about next year? Who has to start the process with the ALC? Is it the homeowners or the property owners, the Roots and Blues, or the city, or all working together?
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, it would be like any other ALC application. The applicant would be the Salmon Arm Folk Music Society. And the applications are now filed directly to the ALC in Burnaby electronically, and all of the owners would have to consent to the application, and then the city would be referred the application.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my comments on the application are, first of all, our Staff Sergeant West commented that the risk to require additional policing is likely moderate to low in my assessment, and may actually resolve a number of community issues by spreading out arrivals of RVs, which is what Mr. Ganella spoke of. I also think that there should be additional economic benefit to the city in that people will be able to come a day or two earlier and perhaps stay a day or two later, and we'll be spending time in our community doing things probably outside the festival grounds, enjoying other pieces of Salmon Arm. So I see it as positive, and we've got 2 years to experiment with it, so I will support the motion. All in favor of the motion? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to our second hearing, and I would ask the administrator please to read the motion. Oh, we need a motion. Sorry. Would someone on council like to make the motion regarding provincial cannabis retail application, CRS 7? Moved by Councillor Eliason, second. Councillor Lavery, thank you. Could I have the administrator read the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that council approve application CRS 7 and that council consider its resolution with respect to the following: zoning bylaw 2303 and city policy number 3.20. Public notification followed by the holding of a hearing at the regular council meeting of January 28, 2019, and the impact of the application on the community.
Great, thank you. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, this application has been made by the province of British Columbia for the Smart Center site located at 2991 10th Avenue, Trans-Canada Highway Southwest. It's the 7th application in front of council. This one is a little bit different than the previous ones because it's the province applying for a provincial government cannabis retail store. And because of that, it doesn't have to go through the channels that a private cannabis store would have to go through. Nevertheless, the province wants to follow our policy, and they're looking to garner council support for their proposal on the Smart Center site. The proposed location on Smart Centers meets the city's policy that was adopted last August. It meets the zoning of the property, the CD7 zone, which is a highway commercial type zone under the use retail store. The building has not been constructed yet. It's identified on the site plans for the development permit as Building F. And so it would be a small, well, not small, but it would, on this map it looks small. It would be a lease area within the building. I think it's 3,000 square feet, if I remember correctly, being proposed. And because it meets our city policy, and because it meets the zoning and the OCP, staff support the proposal.
Great, thank you very much. So open this hearing by asking representative from the province to come forward. I think it's Carrie, is it not? Welcome, Carrie, to council. Thank you for coming and speaking with us.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of council, my name is Carrie Lohr. I'm the Director of Policy with the BC Liquor Distribution Branch. I believe my colleague Cam was here last week presenting the proposal, and you have the information in front of you about the BC cannabis stores. Again, I just want to reiterate that the province's main purpose in opening cannabis stores throughout the province is to take consumers away from the illicit market, keep product out of the hands of youth, and to afford consumers a safe and reliable product that's been quality tested. So I'm here to answer any questions if you have any, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Council, do we have any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Not at this time, but we will call you forward if we do. So I'll call for a first time if there is members of the public who would like to come and speak towards this application. Please come forward. Welcome to council.
Thank you, Mayor Harrison and councillors. Thanks for having me here tonight and have the opportunity to speak to you. I also want to make sure that I thank the people that sent in letters for this hearing. Gord Erickson, Sonny Dollywall and Mark Pugh, Mike Polton, who is of Greenery Cannabis, our MLA Greg Kylo, and Eric Penner, who's with Acuity Accounting. I assume that, or I'm assuming that everybody has those.
We do, thank you.
Okay. My name is James Young. I'm a former businessman in Salmon Arm, and I now do small business mentoring, and I'm an agent and a consultant. And I'm here, I want to make sure you understand, I'm not here representing downtown Salmon Arm. I'm here representing downtown Salmon Arm businesses that I do mentoring for, and in general, small business. We have a lot of small businesses in Salmon Arm that basically are borderline businesses, as they are in many areas of the province. Some of the challenges that they have in Salmon Arms specifically are the seasonality of our area, and also the lack of real significant payrolls or very many significant payrolls to work them through the season. So it's a bit of a tough go. We're a little disappointed that I'm a little disappointed, quite frankly, that we're considering a application from BCLCB regarding this cannabis store because it flies in the face, in my mind, of direct competition with private enterprise, and from my viewpoint, kind of smacks a little bit of double dipping. There's been a pretty good submission of private business in Salmon Arm to go into this. It's going into a very unknown area of an industry that nobody really knows where this is going to go going forward, but there's some private business that's put up some time and resources and plans to put together this retail cannabis stores in Salmon Arm. And then from my viewpoint, we have a bit of a late arrival on the scene that it appears doesn't really require the rules or the licenses that the small business person comes under. So to my mind, it's a bit of an uneven field. And the budget for this is the taxpayer, and the budget for the private enterprise is the private enterprise's pocket and banks. So that makes it a little tougher. Very, very strong statement that will come from me, not on behalf of anybody, but from my viewpoint. Government doesn't have any business in being in government. And I, as a taxpayer, am already over budget on my budget, supporting things like ICBC and other things that I don't really believe in. And I think the general public, if they thought about it a little bit, which I'm sure they do, probably wouldn't either. Now, these are the points that I bring, and so I'll say thank you for listening to that. If you'd like to question me on some of those points, you're welcome to. Secondly, because our colleague, Mr. Erickson, is very ill today, he is not here to represent himself and asked me to do so in his stead, which I will be happy to do once you chat with me about my comments.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Okay.
Does anyone have a question for Mr. Young? Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. I just wondered if you could just share your view on how this would be different from a liquor store. We have government in
It
business.
isn't at all. I do not like BC liquor stores.
Hold on.
Okay.
So, I probably didn't explain this that well, but your conversation needs to come through me. So if there's a question
Sorry.
asked, I will redirect it and then you'll talk to me and
My
everybody will
apology.
hear it.
I
That's
don't know
okay.
I don't know the
So
routine.
what was your question, Councillor Lindgren?
My question is just whether or not he has an opinion on whether or not this would be different from a liquor store where we have the government in business selling liquor, but we also have private liquor stores.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Young.
I'll learn. So, I don't see it as being any different at all.
Okay. Fair enough. Councillor Lindgren, did you have any other questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Young? My question would be, is your concern mostly that it's an LDBC store in smart centers, or that it is in smart centers? So if it were a private application, would you be here today speaking against it or not?
No, I wouldn't be.
Okay, all right, that clarifies it for me, thank you.
I wouldn't be.
Okay, one other question, I think, Councillor Eliason.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Young. The government's already operating a store in Salmon Arm via the internet. Does that make a difference?
Okay, Mr. Young.
I didn't quite understand the end of that.
I think the question, I'll let Councillor Eliason clarify it.
So the only legal store that's operating right now within Salmon Arm is the government store?
Liquor store.
No, we're here for a cannabis reading.
Right.
And so the government is selling cannabis online in Salmon Arm right now.
And the government has,
I'm just asking, does that make a difference?
I don't know if I would say it makes a difference, but government selling cannabis online, if it's one, and I'm assuming it's one for the entire province of British Columbia, selling it online, I think is a good way of, I personally think is a good way of controlling the safety, the age limit, et cetera, of people who are ordering online. I don't think I would be real comfortable with everybody, the masses, just selling cannabis online. I think that's probably where the risk comes in. What I have an objection to is the bricks and mortar.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. Okay, would you like to share with us, we do have Mr. Erickson's letter, but if there's some highlights in that letter you want to share with us, that will be fine.
Sure, I'll read from this because these are not my words. Point number one was, you may believe that government should be the only retailer of controlled substance, that maybe private retailers should never have had the opportunity to be in the game in the first place. That's fine, and I could live with that, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't hold all of the cards, be the wholesaler as well as the retailer, and compete with your constituents as competitors. It simply doesn't add up. His point number two, you may feel, hey, it works with liquor, why not cannabis? I can tell you that the liquor system is broken. It is being sold as the normal, but really it has never worked properly, fairly, or equitably either. It's still a wholesale monopoly, hiding behind government to compete with its taxpayers, using that same taxpayers' money. His third point, I will add and reiterate that it is a serious challenge to compete with government in the model they are presenting. As I tackle it daily in the liquor business, it will certainly leave several of the already approved stores in the downtown to be unprofitable and eventually gone. I truly hope you will consider this as you move to the next stages with government. I believe our downtown will suffer greatly. We will have challenges to overcome with the underpass build already in progress, so we will need all of the help we can get to keep the downtown viable. Thank you for your consideration.
Great, thank you very much, and thanks, James, for summarizing that letter for us from Gord Erickson. Okay. I don't think there's any questions around that letter, but we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will call you back if we have questions later. I would call for a second time if there's other presenters. Asking for a third time? Okay, I will just make sure that council has all of the written information that we've received. I want to make sure everyone's seen it. I'm sure they have. So the letter from Gord Erickson that Mr. Young read to us, received January 23rd. The letter from Mark Pugh and Sunny Dhaliwal, Wednesday, January 23rd, was in your package. A letter from the Greenery Cannabis Boutique, Mike Poulton, January the 28th. That was received today. We have a letter from Acuity Advisors, LLP, Alan Finch, Eric Penner, Harlan Anderson. And we have a letter from Greg Kylo, MLA, received today, January the 28th. We also have a letter received January 25th from Smart Centers. Do all of council have those letters? Okay. Thank you. I'll ask one more time before closing this part of the hearing if there's any other speakers that would like to come forward. Okay, seeing none, Councillor Flynn, can your question or comment wait till after the hearing closes, or would you like to ask it before?
I don't know the answer to that because it's to one of the presenters.
Well, then we need to ask it now. Okay, who would you like to ask it towards?
The government representative, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie. Councillor Flynn.
I just wanted some clarification around your comments that the main purpose of having government distribution is to take consumers away from the illicit market, to provide safe, reliable product that is quality tested, and to ensure no access to youth. I want to ask the 5 or 6 retail outlets that we've approved, are they allowed to sell to youth?
No.
Are they allowed to sell safe, unreliable product that
I'll ask
isn't
the questions,
controlled? Oh,
Councillor
sorry,
Flynn.
sorry. Are
You'll
they
ask
allowed
and
to
I'll
sell
direct.
to youth? Are they allowed to sell unsafe, unreliable product? And are they allowed to take, is their intent and the reason for legalization to take customers away from the illicit market? Are they not all expected to do all of that as
Be
well?
governed by the same rules
Okay.
as put down by the LCRB through the legislation that the liquor distribution branch.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was the case, because I thought they all had to follow all those rules, and I just wanted to make sure.
All stores are supposed to follow all of the same rules. Government stores have an extra layer of accountability, not to say that private retailers aren't accountable. This is not about private retailers. This is about the liquor distribution branch has been mandated with opening stores across the province to carry out the government mandate of legalized cannabis.
And other question is, whatever we vote here, you guys can just ignore. If we said no, you can still open. Is that correct?
Legally, yes. That's not the government's intent. We have committed to following all of the rules and policies of all of the local governments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
So actually,
Hang on,
that
Carrie, I
note,
think we're not finished yet.
So, just kind of on the fringe of what Councillor Flynn said. So your mandate is to follow the policies that the different cities have put in place for their cannabis bylaw, but the place where you're looking to open up this store follows our policy. So you guys obviously researched our city's policy.
Yes, we have a real estate firm that goes out and assesses different sites, and they work with the municipality to determine the zoning and where would be appropriate.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Could I just ask, Carrie, does the province look at whether there has been private applications to a place beforehand? So say, for example, here, your application will be our 7th. We've had 6, we've approved 5. So does the province take that into consideration?
So there's 2 branches of the Ministry of Attorney General. One is the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch.
Okay.
They're located in Victoria. We're the Liquor Distribution Branch. We're located in Vancouver. We are 2 separate branches, and we are not privy to any of the private retailer applications. So unless the municipality makes us aware of private applications, we don't have that information.
Okay, all right. Can I just ask the Director of Development Services, are you aware of whether the applicants, and not the specific person, was aware of the retail stores that we had approved when they applied?
Your Worship, I didn't speak with Carrie on this. I spoke with Cam before Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned that the downtown commercial core is becoming saturated quickly with applications. And it might be in your best interest to look outside of the core, but stay within our policy area.
Okay, thank you. And that just reminds me of my brain, because I remember, sorry, when she was here on Monday, she did say that she was aware of the 4 applications in the downtown. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Flynn, did you have another question?
Yeah, but
so rather than me, did I? Okay. Did you want to pass?
So I guess further to your question and through you, Your Worship.
The regulation branch does not communicate with the part that decides whether or not to bring a public or government liquor store, cannabis store to the community.
No, they're the regulators and we're the distributors, retailers. So it's actually seen to be a conflict of interest if they're to disclose information about private cannabis retailers with us.
Okay. And as the distributor branch, what would be a number of too many that you would go, okay, that community is well serviced privately? Do you guys have a threshold, or do you just, okay, Salmon Arm clearly has a market based on the private interest. We need more there.
It would be a business decision at that point. They would look at population size. Right now, we won't go into communities less than 10,000. There would need to be a successful liquor store typically in the community. We would base our decisions on those types of things. If there was 8 cannabis stores in a fairly small market, it's not likely that we would go in there. At this point, it's so early in the game, it's hard to tell who will be approved on the private retail side, because they're all going through the liquor and cannabis regulation branch, and it's a bit of a process. The reason that the liquor distribution branch doesn't have to be licensed by the liquor and cannabis regulation branch is that we are also an arm of government, and most of what they're doing are sort of those background associate checks as well as financial tests. So obviously, being a government agency, we don't need to go through those because we are part of government already. I'd also like to speak to the fact that it was mentioned that we're using government funds. At this point, we're using liquor revenue to offset cannabis, but typically, like for example, last year, the liquor distribution branch gave the provincial government $1.3 billion in liquor revenue to go back to the province to support important programs and services that the provincial government provides.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your answers.
Thank you. And I feel a little awkward being in the middle of these questions, and so I'm going to get out of the middle of the questions, and I'm sure everyone will respect each other and ask and respond politely. Councillor Eliason.
I'll do my best to play nice. So how many stores, or how many applications for stores is the government making across the province?
Our directive has been to apply in local governments across the province and our business decision right now is 10,000 plus. We have approximately 30 applications in across the province. I can't speak to where they are or what stage of the process they're in at this point. I think that would be premature. We have 8 approved so far.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
The other question I had, because the retail space is 3,000 square feet, I think is what it said. Would that retail space also have like wholesale stuff would be distributed out of there for
No,
strictly
that's
retail space?
just retail.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for answering our questions. Appreciate it. I'll ask one more time if there's any other presenters that would like to come forward who haven't had an opportunity. Okay, I think everyone's had a fair chance. Does any councillor want to ask a question of any presenters before I close the hearing? You can ask staff after, yes. Okay, I will close the hearing then, and we will entertain the motion. I'll just ask if the motion can be put back up on the screen so councillors can familiarize themselves with it. And then it's open to questions of staff and your thoughts. Councillor Eliason.
Thanks. Just from you to staff, the size of the building that we're looking at, the entire building, how big is that building going to be for not just these 2 stores, but the entirety of the structure?
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, Building F is proposed to be 15,000 square feet.
Okay. Value-ish?
Any other questions, Councillor Eliason?
No, thank you.
Councillor Flynn.
I just wanted to ask staff, all the hard work we all did, and you especially, and the community providing input, did any person presenting, or did any of us, or did any of staff think of Smart Center specifically and having it open to the cannabis opportunity in light of the it feels like a lifetime of public hearings we had to approve smart centers in the first place, and then develop the regulations around alcohol, drugs, i.e. legal drugs at the time, prescription drugs, and banking. So when we originally did smart centers, due to desire to protect the downtown, there was significant discussion around those three key downtown items: money, drugs, and booze. I don't remember anybody in the public bringing it up. I didn't think of it when we went through the process. And what most of the letters we've received has focused on is protection of the downtown. What was that thought about? I'm betting you thought about it, but we never really talked about it.
Your Worship, when the policy was being created last year, the policy map 1 included all the highway commercial lands west of the town center in pink. There was no sort of spotlight on the Smart Center site for any special reason.
Okay. So just to be clear, if we said no to this site, where there used to be a liquor store across the road, they could just do it there.
In the Woodsman building,
Yes.
one could apply for that.
Okay. So, or anywhere else on these pink, or on First Nation land by where the Hideaway liquor store is now, all could have this operation there.
Well, the First Nations land is a little bit different than anything else we're talking about because we have no,
No, I know, I understand that, but they could go there quite easily.
I think.
Okay, thanks for answering that question. I thought that was the answer, but I wanted to make sure.
Okay, Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I feel my question has been answered, but I'll just say it directly through you. Anyone could still apply for a cannabis license in that space, public or private.
Anyone can apply anywhere in Salmon Arm is the broad answer.
Yes.
If someone applies, say, in the residential area, then it doesn't meet our policy and it doesn't meet our zoning. If they apply for any property in the pink area, then it meets our OCP, might meet our zoning. I don't know the zoning of all these properties, but if the zoning allows a retail store, then the zoning supports it and the policy supports it.
All right, thank you.
So there's no limit on the number of applications that the city will entertain outside of here. And in fact, even in the area that limits the number of stores to 4, people can still apply.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open it up to discussion now. I think we've had our questions. Unless you have one, that's fine. Councillor Flynn, would you like to start it for us?
Thank you. First of all, I think I guess it seemed too good to be true that our cannabis policy was working so well and so simple and so easy. And now it's not. And I think some of the things that have come to light because of the reaction of the downtown businesses, first of all, one of the letters said, should we have a restriction on the number of shops outside the downtown? And in light of how popular our community seems to be for opening retail cannabis outlets, I think we need to probably consider that when we review the bylaw. I want to make it clear the province does not need our approval. And I also, Carrie, this isn't directed to you, but it's directed to government-run liquor stores and cannabis stores. I don't think it's where the government should be. I'm a small business owner. I believe in free enterprise. And I think the people who put their applications in before you guys did were put in a very unfair position because they've put a lot of money up front, waded through a process, and are just getting their answers, and now are finding out that there's this huge competitor who also controls the wholesale. And I know you're independent, but I'm of the belief that if we were going to have private cannabis, it should have stayed private, and there shouldn't be government cannabis stores. And I think the private stores can take consumers away from the illicit market, can provide safe, reliable product, and can ensure there's no access to youth. And I know you have an extra layer of accountability, but private owners have just as high a layer of accountability, because if they don't follow the rules, it's their money that they've invested that they lose when they get shut down. So I'm not sure that you can compare those. I think all operators that we've approved, we hope, will be following the rules. So, but from a business point of view, I don't agree with what you're doing. That being said, I'm not sure from a councillor point of view I have any legitimate reason within the policy to turn it down. I can disagree personally. I think if you're using 10,000 as the threshold, you guys should revisit that, because we've only got 18,000 and we've got 5 approved. So to me, there has to be some look at what's going on privately, and I know you're independent. All that being said, from a policy and community point of view, I don't see grounds to turn down your application. I still might be the only one that votes against it, who knows, but it's more about the business model that if I do vote against it, that'll be why. I'm firmly on the fence, never foresaw the downtown feedback, didn't think of that issue, and as Councillor Eliason said, people can buy it online from the government already. So that's a little bit different than liquor. So the private stores are already in competition with the government just by deciding to get into the business. So I'm going to wait to hear what others say, but I have a hard time not turning it down based on our policy, but not based on my belief in free enterprise. And I think the independent business owners that applied should have been told starting from the start that the government was hoping to open a 3,000 square foot liquor store. I think they've been treated unfairly. So.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Eliason.
It's really nice to be on the cutting edge of this kind of thing. Hey, guys? Oh, man. So laissez-faire, or should we get involved with the market? And clearly, Councillor Flynn's outlined that maybe we shouldn't be messing with the market, and maybe we should fix the market again and try and fix it so we know how to do it. It's interesting economics, this stuff. The government store exists online, but that's not what we're here discussing this, because all of our previous applications were privately held, right? The issue that's being brought up here is that this is a government store. So if we just took it and looked at this store and say, hey, does a store work in the pink area? Yeah. In the green area, we tried to protect it so there were only 4 stores. Up by the high school, in between the high schools at the North Commercial Hub by Uptown, we said no because it's too close to the schools. So if we wanted to put a store here, does this area work for us? That's the question we're asking each other right now, and that's being asked by the applicant. The answer is, according to our policy, which is brand new, yeah, it does. It does work out there. Now, so it fits the zoning, it fits all of our public consultation, and being the person who fought tooth and nail against, and I think that I did a really good job at that hearing with Richard Wozniak, and I'm like, hey man, like, go on, drugs, booze. I tried to get on the front cover of the paper. Like I thought I really did a great job on that. In Smart Centers, what happened? Well, they opened up a liquor store right across the street. Yeah, right? Like across the highway at Woodsman. Our job, we tried to keep them downtown. We tried to keep the liquor stores downtown. We tried to do that. And with Woodsman, boom, there's your liquor store. So we're like, oh, no liquor stores out there. Boom, no drugs, no booze, no banks. Let's keep it all downtown. And it just didn't work. So this location is what we're talking about. It works for me. It worked for the community and all the consultation. The issue that we're being presented with is how something outside of our control which is how a higher level of government that has way more authority under every legal rule in the book is choosing to sell and implement what they're doing with it. But in our zoning, and in our community plan, in all of our consultation, this is what we're left with. It's like a lot of our powers, right? This is what you're left with, or here's your new opportunity. But I mean, our letter from our MLA says, hey, this isn't maybe how we feel the government should be doing this. Okay, well, is that for us to decide? No. The government says they want to do it and they want to do it there. That's their application, that's their right, and it fits within our guidelines, so I have to support it. So, I mean, that being said, if you don't like it, you can order it from any one of the provincial government websites across Canada. And if I don't like the products in Salmon Arm, I can order them from this site called Amazon. Like the online, it's there. It's all there. So if I don't like the Canadian Tire brand stuff that we have here, I can order from Canadian Tire online. It'll be here tomorrow. So there's our confusion. The reason why I asked the kind of non sequitur questions about the building is, looks like $15,000 or 15,000 square foot building, $200 a foot ish. That's going to be about a $3 million building to build. If that's fully built out in the next year or two, that's going to bring us in about $90,000 a year of property taxes. If these last two units are the linchpin or the final two leases for Smart Centers to sign, that's a lot of property taxes for us to bring in each year, if this is what this approval brings. So it's a tough balance, this position. And I feel like we're put in between a rock and a hard place, and not like other governments have ever done that, but it meets our zoning, and my optimism says that the other stores will manage their margins and make it work and make those conscious business decisions. So I will support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Eliason. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Harrison. Just to start off with, I think that we have come up with a very workable and flexible cannabis retail policy, and there are we knew all along there are going to be glitches that are challenging our thinking on this. I am comfortable with the entry of a government cannabis retail into the marketplace. I would suggest that the previous applicants, and again, no number of them personally, are sophisticated people. I think part of their anticipated and foreseeable risk would have been that a government store would have come. I think that was in my, and I did not have those direct conversations with them, but in the thinking of all this sort of thing, that was a very real possibility, and we have one here now. I have to say, what has given me pause is the original, or the existing CD zone regulations on the Smart Center property out there about alcohol and things, but we did approve this policy, and it extended all the way out there. So I am comfortable with this. I will support the application as it goes forward. I know that it injects a risk, more risk perhaps, than was anticipated, but I think that risk should have been anticipated, to tell you the truth. I do react a little bit as well, and there's been some in the presentation here tonight, and in one of the letters we have about if they thought about it a little bit, or give serious consideration to, and I can assure the gallery and those who are listening here right now, we have been very diligent about getting input into this, very diligent about considering this, and very diligent about the process to which this policy has come up. This is not a one-off. This is not a reactive thing. I get where a letter would say, please give serious consideration. I'll accept that. But I would also say that this table has given serious consideration to the matters in front of us. So, Your Worship, I don't think I have too many more comments on here. It is a conundrum, without a doubt, but I will support the application. Thank you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the gallery, thank you for being here and sharing your views. I always appreciate what we have to say. I too am a small business owner, but I'm also a city councillor, and I'm duty bound to follow the rules and the procedures. and the process. So the first thing I want to say, Your Worship, is first of all, let's remember that nobody's ever done this before. We're retailing previously good that was sold on the black market. So we've never done this before. We don't know. We didn't know what this would look like 6 months ago. We don't know what it's going to look like in 6 months or 6 years. So to those of you who put your personal money at risk to get in on the ground floor of this industry, emerging industry, I admire you. I salute you. I know you take huge risks, your own money, your own time. And I also know you're good business people, and you know that some risk will give you reward. Now, finding out after you've applied that the distribution branch is also opening a branch would have been, I admit, a bit of a smack in the face if I put myself in your position. But I remind you that if this had been a numbered company applying for this very same license, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So it's really not about the extra store, it's about who owns the store. So I get that, and I want to be clear. But who owns I am not in charge of the provincial government. We are not in charge of the provincial government. This is not our jurisdiction. And they are here to advise us, to inform us. It's my point of view, they're not asking us. This is a courtesy call to let us know what they're doing. Now, having said all that, it's not all doom and gloom, right? On the ground floor of a new industry, the province has recognized that there might be a market happening here in Salmon Arm, willing to invest in a new building and new jobs and what have you, as you have as members of the new industry. But I just want to share with you something that happened in Kelowna last week when we were at council school. The mayor of Kamloops got up and talked about their cannabis store, and he said, my interpretation of his words is that Kamloops has become a cannabis destination, and they're calling it Amsterloops and Camsterdam. So let's not forget that this industry might evolve into something that is entirely unlike liquor, where it's not about a price on a shelf, a price of a bottle on a shelf. And as the industry matures with edibles and oils and gummies and what have you, and smaller producers, there's a huge opportunity here in terms of being competitive and innovative. And I have high expectations of my business community, and I know you can meet the challenge. And we do have a huge market area, like 50,000 plus. Also, Chase, Enderby, and Revelstoke do not have 10,000 citizen residents. So I think our market just got a lot bigger. So I will support it. I'm sorry you're disappointed, but I ask you to remember whose jurisdiction this is coming from and what choices we really do honestly have at this table. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers who wish to speak before I call the question? Councillor Flynn.
Thank you for allowing me a second opportunity. And as I stated when I finished my comments, I was firmly on the fence. And as usual, the wise words of my fellow councillors have helped me move off the fence. If I felt that I had the jurisdiction to say no to this and it had policy support, I would vote no. I don't think our policy is wrong. It's new. We're learning. I think if we said no to this site, it would just open elsewhere, or it would open anyway. I do want to reiterate to the government representative that if 10,000 is a population threshold, I would ask you for communities of 20,000 that service an area of 40,000 that you consider looking at the private industry and making decisions that supposedly protect the public. And maybe your 10,000 is just you can't make money under that. I'm not sure, but I think there might be a policy reason. I just think the process has been inherently unfair, but Councillor Lavery kind of opened my eyes saying that as free enterprise small business people, you have to look at all the risks. And I think a realistic risk was government getting into the business. So I can't prevent free enterprise, being a person that I am. I can't prevent a business from coming in that would do it anyway, and our policy allows it. So I have to vote in support, as much as I don't feel it's the government's job to be in this business.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Your Worship. For me, I wasn't at this table when the policy was formed, but coming to the table when we had our first applications, I remember the second one at this table, it was like, well, we can't vote in favor of this because our policy doesn't support it. So we're not gonna, application number 2, think about varying our policy. And I think what I'm hearing at this table is our policy that staff and city council of the day and the public worked hard on, you know, had policies in there about limiting to the downtown core, how many we would allow, which we're maxed out at. And when we look at the map, the policy supports this. And then the other thing that comes to mind for me is that one of the first, well, the first store that was opened was one by the Crown in Kamloops. So that was right at the very beginning. So being a business person myself, I guess I could say, how did we not foresee that this could possibly be coming down the pipe, literally, for us? So, I didn't even plan that, but I thought, anyways. But, so for me, representing the policy at this table that supports it, I will be voting in favor for it.
Thank you. Councillor Lindgren.
Thank you, Your Worship. Being the new person at the table, always waiting to hear what everybody else has to say to see if I've thought through what the options are. And though I sympathize greatly with the people that have invested their own money into this and now feel that they have to compete unfairly, I also know that the policy is there for a reason, to guide us, to set some boundaries about what things we make decisions on and what things we don't, because otherwise it becomes arbitrary and discriminatory, and we can't allow ourselves to get into those weeds. And so we have very clear policies about this, and like I said, though I empathize, or I sympathize with the folks that are in and are worried now, I feel that the policies support this, and I have no, in good conscience, good reason to oppose it just because it's owned by the government. So I'll be voting in favor.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We will move on to hearing number 3. We do have a motion for this one. Could we hear the motion?
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Lindgren, that VP 492 be authorized for issuance for Lot 2, Plan KAP 9770 to vary zoning bylaw 2303 as follows. Decrease the minimum parcel width from 14 to 13.7 meters for proposed lots 1 and 2 as shown in Appendix 5 of the staff report dated December 20, 2018.
Thank you. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, this is a property addressed on 21st Street Northeast at 661. The applicant is Jeff Stacer, and the proposal is to reduce the minimum lot width from 14 meters to 13.7 meters for 2 proposed lots that haven't been subdivided yet, but we have an application in for that. And there's also an application to rezone the property to R8 residential suite zone. So we're talking about a reduction in width of 30 centimeters for each property, and that should have no impact at all on bylaws or safety or anything like that.
Thank you. So this hearing is just about the variance piece, and I see Mr. Stacer's in the audience. Jeff, would you like to come forward and add anything to the report?
I think it's pretty straightforward, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Okay, we'll see if they do. Council, is there any questions around this variance permit for Mr. Stacer? Okay, I'll ask a second time if there's anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this variance permit. I'll ask a third time. Council, do you have any questions for the applicant before I close the hearing? Okay, I will close the hearing then, and we can discuss the question. Any comments or questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll call the question on VP 492. All in favor? Passes unanimously. We'll move to section 22, which is the statutory public hearings. And just before we do those, I'll read the opening statement. So this public hearing for bylaws number 4300 and 4299 is convened pursuant to section 464 of the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, anyone who believes their interest in property is affected by these matters will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions to council. If you wish to speak concerning the proposed bylaws, please approach council and begin your presentation by clearly stating your name and residential address. The function of council this evening is to receive the views of the public and ask questions regarding submissions. Council will not debate the merits of this proposal with individuals. The background documents related to the bylaws and written submissions have been received by the city, are available for inspection by the public, and are located in the binders on the table by the entry room doors. All written submissions will be retained by the corporate officer for review by council and by members of the public. To ensure everyone a reasonable opportunity to be heard, the following rules of procedure have been established. 1. Please direct all submissions to the chair. I will then redirect questions to the correct staff person. 2. Following introduction of bylaws by city staff, the floor will be open for presentations, starting with the applicant and followed by other interested parties in the order in which the chair recognizes them. 3. Presentations will not be limited unless the submission is not relevant to the proposed bylaw. 4. There will be 3 calls for submissions prior to the closing of this public hearing. 5. I ask that everyone respect the views of others and try to keep your presentations as concise as possible. And finally, legislation does not permit council to hear or receive submissions from the public after this hearing is closed. I would ask the Director of Development Services to now explain the first proposal.
Your Worship, the first proposal is bylaw number 4300, which has received first and second reading for the property legally described as Lot 2, Plan KAP 79770 at 661 21st Street Northeast. The same property that just received approval for a variance. The same applicant, Jeff Stacer, and the purpose of the rezoning is to allow for each of the 2 lots proposed. Each dwelling can have a legal secondary suite within the house.
Great, thank you. And for council, we have already okayed the variance. We're now just talking about the zoning. I will ask the applicant first if he would like to come forward and add anything to the submission.
Your Worship, again, pretty straightforward, and only find comment unless there's any questions.
Okay. Does council have any questions for Mr. Stacer around this rezoning? Okay, seeing no questions right now, I'll ask for a second time if there's anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this rezoning. Asking a third time. Council, do you have any questions for staff before I close the hearing? Councillor Flynn.
Just staff, clearly very often we downzone, and this is somewhat of a downzone. Staff isn't concerned with that. I mean, we could be waiting 20 years before it would be a true R4. What densities would be allowed under R4?
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, that question has been looked at quite a bit over the last couple of years, even with the previous property owner, but the best example I can give you of what could be developed on there with the present R4 zoning is this fourplex on this lot right here, which is roughly the same size. So you could, same density, 4 units, but being a fourplex, the units can be larger. Okay. And one of the big differences is this development had to upgrade the frontage. You can see the curb, gutter, sidewalk. Mm-hmm. Under R8 zoning, frontage upgrades are exempt.
So from a market point of view, this probably helps us achieve affordable housing a little easier with rental suites as opposed to for homes in a duplex or something.
Possibly less expensive to develop too.
Okay, well, I'm in support. We do see a lot of down zoning, but I think this is a good spot for it, and when it comes to the number of...
Close the hearing, Councillor Flynn.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
Did you have any other questions? Or
Yeah, no, sorry.
Okay.
I got ahead of myself.
All right, that's okay. You can press your button. I'll have you speak after the hearing.
I'm in favor.
Any other, last time asking for any submissions? Okay, seeing none, I'll close this section of the hearing. We'll do the second hearing now on zoning amendment application zone 1137 Arsenal. I'll have the Director of Development Services explain the application to us.
Bylaw number 4299 proposes to rezone Lot 13, Plan EPP 68403 from R7, large lot single family, to R8 residential suite zone for the property on 20th Street in Upper Lakeshore area 4080. And presently there is a house under construction. The last time I drove along that road and looked at the property, I believe the house was almost complete.
Getting there.
And Adam Arsenault was the applicant, and he's here tonight.
Great, thank you very much. Adam, do you have anything that you would like to add to the report from the Director of Development Services? Please come forward if you'd like.
Not at this time.
Okay. Do council have any questions for Adam? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask a second time if there's any submissions from the gallery. A third time. Council, do you have any questions for staff around this application? Asking a final time then. Okay, seeing no submissions, I will close this statutory public hearing, and we'll move to number 23, reconsideration of bylaws. So number 1 is the City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4300, Stacer. We have a motion.
Moved by Council Lavery, seconded by Council Wallace Richmond, that the bylaw entitled zoning amendment bylaw number 4300 be read a third time.
Council will open it up to questions or comments. Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Passes unanimously. We will move to 23.2, City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4299, Arsenal. Council, any questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call the question.
Your Worship, I need to read the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Moved
Now,
by
I was ahead of myself.
Moved by Councillor Cannon, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the bylaw entitled zoning amendment bylaw number 4299 be read a third and final time.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passes unanimously. Now we'll have our question and answer period. Do either of you gentlemen have a question for us today?
Just a comment.
Come on up to the microphone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. Just to follow up on Councillor Flynn's comments about affordable housing and things, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on this particular property and properties like this in Salmon Arm. That's, you know, a goal for a lot of us is to provide affordable housing, and this property has sat for, the property that I own has sat for a long time and not been able to be developed because with road frontages and things, it becomes cost prohibitive. The other factor is also financing on a project like that. As soon as you get into 4 units, or you're looking at commercial financing and things like that. And I think that there's a need for properties like that to be down zoned to create almost the same density and make it affordable. And it's a, you know, I've talked to staff about it, having a zone that was maybe a duplex zone that would allow suites, that would be a whole nother zone that may accommodate that type of thing without having the medium and high density requirements for offsite servicing. So just my 2 cents, and I appreciate your time.
I do appreciate that input, and we do know the official community plan is a suggestion for zoning, and so there's cases like this where it makes more sense, but also your input's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the gallery? Seeing none, we have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Lindgren, second by Councillor Eliason, that the regular council meeting of January 28, 2019 be adjourned.
All those in favor? Thank you, staff. Thank you, council, and the public. Thanks, Martha.